Seriously, you can't hear me?
Unless you want this
I've
one.
never had that issue before. Okay. That's okay. No, I'm fine. I will stand still for the moment. She gave it away. We'll get it back. Yeah. All right.
Testing.
So for natural gas, how many of the client companies actually use natural gas? Do you put trades in, the logistics, actuals, physical position, natural gas? So so that's a good subsection, like most of everybody in here as a client uses.
You're in the right session.
Yes, so I expect a lot of good conversation from everybody. So we're gonna, capSpire is gonna do a wonderful little presentation and walk us through some of the things that they have seen, some of the hiccups that they have been part of in some of their implementations, and then we will open it up for a great conversation, a dialogue. A dialogue. Do we understand the definition of dialogue? I will call on people. I am not shy about that. Jason's giving me a thumbs up. So, all right. So I will be happy to click if you want to click.
Perfect. Go ahead.
All right.
Well,
What? Oh, yes. I am not the natural gas liaison for the Allegro user group. This is a vacant position. We need somebody to be the liaison to help coordinate with our partner vendors and also with, to head up, and work with the working group, which will be formed from all of you who raised your hand a little while ago saying that you use natural gas. So guess what? Everybody gets to participate. We all get a ribbon today. Yay! Okay, so yes, so seriously, please do consider being a part of this. We do have fun on council and with liaisons and everything else. This is a great opportunity to have your voice heard, as well as the networking capabilities and everything else. So please consider being the natural gas liaison for the Allegro user group.
awesome.
Take it away, capSpire.
No, thank you very much, Brooke. Just quickly, I'm not also Tom Brouillard. Tom Brouillard is sitting next to me. He's a managing director with capSpire.
Tom Brouillard.
Yeah. I'm Larry Locke with capSpire. I'm over our Allegro practice at capSpire. So we knew this session would be very heavy on questions from this group. We saw a lot of hands raised. So really what we're going to do is run through 4 kind of interesting topics that we typically run into in our natural gas implementations. We've got a bunch of slides. Thank you for the volume push there. We've got some other slides as well after these 4 or 5 slides, just as conversation starters if we get kind of a little quiet from the audience. So we'll let Brooke go through those. I don't think that's going to be a problem with this audience, but we do have that for that group. So anyway, so we're going to go through, and I want to get off the slide as fast as possible because that cat gives me a headache. But really, as you guys know, doing your scheduling in Allegro or in ETRM, there's typical things that we run into, and Tom's going to talk a bit about tariff management and just some things that can be done around that to make that process more efficient. We just had a great conversation about that right before we started the session. Then talk a little bit about some of the newer environmental developments that we're seeing. Just curious on what folks are doing in that market. So I'll talk about that session. Tom will talk about virtual pipelines, and then we'll talk about good old position reporting for gas positions. So that's our start to this. This is really going to be a simple one, and we want to open it up to the forum to get you guys to collaborate and communicate. So
Yeah, so that cat was really moving. I think he got mid-con completely scheduled while we were sitting here. And everyone, looks a little tired from lunch, so I'm going to have everyone stand up. I'm just kidding. Don't do
good job, Tyler.
So tariff management, Some people probably it affects more than others. Recently, we've had several clients that had situations where they have tariffs on their pipelines that they deal with and have lots of different services and different service contracts, and a very onerous process of having to go into each one, update the tariff all the time, and wanted a way, and came from a legacy system where there was kind of a functionality where you could put tariffs in, put a price in, and that would populate downstream. When everything changes, they could cut and paste easily into it. So, kind of a good solution that really uses out-of-the-box functionality for the most part is we took the price index concept and said, well, let's apply this to the rates and we can set up a tariff one time in a grid, and then use the rate field, tie it into that, and then whenever put them in as like a posting price index, and then that rate is good up until you get a new one. So it really worked out very well with minimal extra work. We had to tie into the rates so that it will apply the tariff rather than the rate itself, and then keeping with kind of the price index and price field, we use the rate as like an adder. So then you could put an adder onto the tariff if you want. Added some panes into the scheduling NG logistics services view so that you could see the tariffs right there, so that the same person that's managing the contract could manage all of that. And then with the added benefit of being able to set it as a trade index, and then actually use these tariffs. So if you're doing capacity release or something through trade entry, you could actually pull the tariff indexes in that way. So it was a really interesting way to do it. And I thought, this is probably something that a lot of the user base could utilize, possibly even ION, adding that functionality, because it's really already there. We're just taking the tools that are already in ION and kind of tying it together into the services area of the application. So I just wanted to kind of share that and talk about that, and see if anybody had thoughts on that, or is doing, or struggling with tariffs in general, and kind of managing that in the system.
In quick question, does someone raise their hand? Do you know which rate matrix this is for which pipeline? You could probably see it on the spreadsheet. Nope, close. I always think, whenever I think about just massive rate matrix, it's always Northern Natural Gas. It's just with the 22 pools or whatever. So that's always a fun one, because I know they have the spreadsheet on their EBB I can pull off real quick to show as an example. But we were talking earlier, and I think one of your kind of comments that you would like to see is you've almost got the opposite problem, where you want to make sure that when you're creating that path, that rate, there is a rate, various rates and various fuel rates available, and that if you don't have that available, you'd actually like it to prompt and say, hey, are you okay to create this path? There's no fuel rate associated with it. Maybe it's a pulling path and it's okay.
Hang on. We need, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. What I was mentioning earlier today is that it would be nice to have some dependencies within the system, that when you do set up a service contract in your NG service, that NG service is being set up based on a contract that you have, whether it's a firm contract that has capacity, or a gathering agreement that has multiple components for gathering, compression, maybe some ACAs, some commodity charges and whatnot, that as you're setting up that NG service agreement, you're setting up the contract, you're setting up the rates applicable to it, and then the rates below it, right, for whatever that time period is on that contract. So that when you start to schedule, if the scheduler has missed a rate, the system's going to tell you, no, you can't schedule this path because you're missing a COT charge or a gathering charge, or you're missing a fuel. And Allegro doesn't have that. It allows you to go ahead and create as many paths as you want. You're using your NG service contract, but it allows you to create those. So you're not catching that until either you get an invoice at the end of the month or accounting calls and says, hey, settlement's not tying out, you're missing rates. So then now you got to go back, take the time to do that. But if you had it up front, would be nicer. The other thing you mentioned earlier was having that rate within NG path would be amazing. We have that today in our legacy system. We don't have it now in Allegro, which is a bummer because being able to see your rates, whether it's a receipt rate or a delivery rate within your path, is also very helpful to make sure you don't miss anything. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I think having that in the path kind of alleviates both problems, because then you would see when you scheduled right away, oh, well, I have.
Yeah, I thought somebody was letting the beat drop. Sorry.
That's because we're so hot.
Okay. Sorry, folks, we are having a fire alarm. Tony, do we just need to go to the exit? Do we know? Hang on, I think we're finding out whether or not this is real or not. We're hearing it.
We were aware this was a hot topic, but.
False alarm. False alarm.
It's a good thing we went through our safety tips this morning.
Thank you, everybody, for being cognizant and stretching your legs.
It's one way to get the happy hour started faster.
I hope I don't have to get out gift cards again.
That's
I gotta get it back in here.
All right, so where were we?
We were talking about.
Talking about adding the rate to the path, right? So having the flexibility in order to, when you create the path, apply the rate from the services. So is it seeing something that, you know, one of the thoughts would be when you, in logistics, highlight the contract, the transportation contract, having something that shows the rates at that point effective, a pop-up, and I'm spitballing an idea.
Coming.
Sorry, Dan. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so just having two simple columns, or actually three simple columns, that basically show whether it's a receipt type of rate, what that base rate is, a delivery rate, what that base rate is, and the total column, because it's a cost column, right? So it would give you the value of that path. So you could, you know, if you're scheduling for the month and you have that whole transaction there, you could quickly and easily value your invoice to make sure that it's accurate even before it gets to accounting.
Nizar, is there an evaluation process within just natural gas logistics? Can you run evaluation on your pipeline? Yes.
That was a no.
I don't believe so, but I understand what you're talking about.
I think we just found another feature.
Yeah, there isn't. I don't even know that you need evaluation. You just show you the rate. You don't even need to calculate evaluation. Just pull the rate through that's going to get applied to that path.
So what about a pop-up that shows the valid rates? No? Okay. A simple calculation. I'm repeating because you're not on a microphone, Delia.
Yeah, sorry. So it's rate times volume in your path, right? To me, that is a very simple calculation, and you don't have to run valuation for that. Why would you need to run valuation?
No, and I'm just.
I see.
I'm just saying that to be able to value, do you want the individual path? You want the total of the
It's
at the end of the month?
By path. And then, you know, you can do the sum at the bottom of your total, all your rows. You know, a simple view of the value of your rates, receipts, deliveries, total value.
Yeah, I've even seen in other ion solutions where as you select your long and short position and you know the point that's associated with that, it'll actually go and look for the applicable. It'll actually reduce the drop down to what the applicable service contracts that are even available. That was kind of neat, right? If you had a lot of, you know, small little negotiated contracts out there and you're having to flip through 40 or 50, it's nice to say, here's the 3 that are really, you know, for this zone or for this segment that are applicable. So it's kind of nice.
It's just a simple ask, you know, to avoid.
A simple ask to avoid.
What I'm saying is it's a simple view to avoid, I guess, delays at the end of the month when accounting's trying to close out the month, right? So as your schedulers are balancing their pools and their positions at the end of the month when they get their shipper statements and invoices, obviously just transport invoices because your gathering invoices are later in the month, but at least they can value to ensure that your FT or any IT that has cost is all in there so that when accounting goes in, they can just go ahead and, you know, generate those invoices without issues, right?
Yeah, good one.
You wanna, yeah, we can go to the next.
On the last one, I was just curious, go back to the last slide real fast. Is anyone, and I'm trying to think of this, I'm aware of this feed becoming available, even being available on ICE, but I'm not sure if it's to market yet, but is anyone using, you know, I've heard of a vendor out there that's going to be to start providing data feeds for fuel and transport rates. You guys heard about that? Familiar with that? Yes, there we go. I figured a mirror on the back would have known that. But anyways, that's something I think that's interesting as well. And I think it supports kind of that price index model that you mentioned, right? Because it's a nice map you could do almost like a price feed. So
yeah.
Do you guys have that live and in system or just heard about something and evaluating it? Yep, nice.
He said it's live.
I think it's such a nice, you know, can do a cost benefit analysis that makes sense for your organization. But I think that would be something that would just take care of some of just the, again, what's every scheduling group having to do on a seasonal basis, right? Or every time, you know, obviously it won't take care of your negotiated rates, but for your max rates, it'd be great having that out there. Yeah, and I wanted to, this was mine just because I've had 3 or 4 separate conversations with existing clients and some prospects across a few different solutions, but a couple of these being Allegro. I mean, RNG is obviously something we've seen in the market for a while. Do you guys have RNG, renewable natural gas, or responsibly sourced gas? Is that something your organization is starting to get into, either as a producer or looking to buy gas that way? Perfect. Have you guys started to get your volumes? I guess which one? Both or?
We're looking for RNG. Haven't bought any yet, but we've been in the market for that. For RSG, we just recently bought some RSG tokens and retired them against this year's production. Our company produces methanol here in West Texas, and would love to get into some RNG to make some green methanol, but haven't got to that just yet.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think we've seen it more with some of our West Coast clients and really modeling that. And honestly, from a, you know, if I think about it from an Allegro impact perspective, it wasn't, I mean, when you were talking about when you modeled it, really the biggest difference was there's just more of a premium as opposed to a normal MMBTU.
For RNG, yeah. It was, as far as logistically, it's scheduled just like any other gas commodity. So it was more around the pricing, at least in that instance.
Yeah, but the RSG one was interesting. We work with the producer. They're looking to get all of their East Coast volumes certified as RSG volumes. And I forget if they're going through MIQ or Project Canary. It's a bit of a, you know, and so they were starting to ask us, well, what does this look like? So was there somebody who had a question? Sorry, I saw Tom. Oh yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And it really, RSG to me really looks like any other environmental attribute. You know, whether it's a RIN or a REC. To your point, you've got a vintage. You can buy it attached or unattached. But this was a few months ago, and as I started to go through and kind of gather requirements, and unfortunately the client only had so many. They were asking us, how does this impact your ETRM setup? We went and asked around, you know, you look at maybe two years ago, there were probably 20 or 25 RSG deals that are out there. I don't know what the volume was for this year, but it is something that's growing out there. It's just interesting because it's creating that kind of, I think of it more from a fuels perspective, not a gas perspective, that RINs type scenario now with gas. The interesting thing is it's you're going through so many different vendors to get it certified. There's all the different exchanges like Expansive where you're going out and starting to market these volumes. So it's just something we're starting to come into from a modeling perspective. I was just really curious if you guys are seeing that in the market. And thanks for your comments back there. Absolutely. Anybody else or? Right.
We're definitely talking about it, Brianna from Eco Energy. We just started a solar division, and so it's a carbon neutral solution. So they're definitely saying that our traders are wanting to go there, but we haven't done anything. We've just talked about it.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, the nice thing is that there's other products that have had a similar path. So from a modeling perspective, when they ask, okay, well, how are we going to model the fact that we can sell this attached, unattached? There's a premium attached to, when you're selling it with the environmental attribute. It expires just like other environmental projects. The nice thing is there's a model there from a trade capture perspective. Scheduling shouldn't look any different, although I'm seeing tariffs out there. I want to say Tennessee now has a tariff out there specifically for RSG. And I think that's just a way to try to keep, for better term, the molecules traced through. And so you can kind of make sure that folks that are on the demand side, so they can, maybe it's a retail client that wants to have a green energy package for their retail customers, they can now go and say, we bought RSG gas, and we know that because we bought the environmental attributes, but we also shipped it on a contract that actually was specifically for that. So I haven't modeled the service contract side of it. It was just something interesting I saw as we were going across and doing our research.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't know that about Tennessee. We don't transport in Tennessee, so we'll see, I guess, if TECO or some of these other pipes do something similar. What was interesting to me learning a lot about all this is, and we're going to use Allegro for this, is it's just all really a paper calculation. I mean, the actual gas that's going to the plant to burn and be converted to methanol, et cetera, is really just gas off the pipe.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot to learn, but we're using Allegro for all that. So.
It was funny, when a few months ago when we found out about it, my sister's a gas trader at another company, and I asked her, I was like, do you know what RSG is? Have you heard of responsible source gas? She's like, I have no idea what it is, but I've been asked to go out and go sell it. So maybe by the time next year when we have this conversation at the AEG, we'll have a few more folks with some interest there. So no, thanks on that one, guys.
Okay, virtual pipeline agreements. I think most, not everyone's got some type of situation like this, whether it be kind of a virtual storage or a displacement agreement or something where someone else is transporting gas and giving it back to them somewhere else. And how do you model that in a physical, in the physical logistics? You want to be able to intermingle that, I guess, on the same pipelines where you have actual transport. Has anybody run into that as an issue? Is anybody dealing with that right now?
Mm-hmm. Hang on. Delia's having an issue with the shipper must have title.
Well, yes,
but there are physical swaps that you can, yes. You can do a physical, at least I know that in a prior company, we did that and it was a legal transaction. So I don't remember exactly how we modeled it and how we got by with it, but it was done.
So recently, this is in Canada, but they were also buying in the US, but they had agreements where they would sell to counterparties at a certain location and then buy back gas at other locations, and they wanted to be able to physically move it and account for it within Allegro. So, and achieving that through streaming and different contracts and stuff like that. So I didn't know, I just kind of wanted to poll the group, see who else was doing similar type activity and how they're managing it and things like that. See if that's a topic, that people wanted to talk about. Well,
Safe to say not marathon.
So anyway, we found that, through streaming and able to create, virtual contracts, we were able to mimic that and schedule that way. So, then the issue then becomes like, how does that impact WCAG? Because now you have stuff flowing across pipelines and through points and getting around the WCAG impacts and things like that. So I don't know. I guess it doesn't sound like that's.
So it's, that's a very similar scenario in like a bulk or liquids trading, because that is more legal. So creating, that is an issue, making sure that the correct value flows from the pipe over here to the pipe over here. So, and when they're not connected, and so you don't have a specific path. So typically, I know that in the bulk or liquid side, we've created, we've got class events that take care of that.
No.
In order to get that value and volume passed back correctly.
Next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and so we had a raise of hands of how many folks use natural gas. Obviously, most people in this room raise their hands. How many folks are scheduling every day in the system and tying out their positions at the end of the day? Are you guys leveraging the in-system reports like the Nat Gas Position Report, or doing your own reports? Yep, got it. Do you guys, are you guys using BI or walk me through how you guys are modeling that? Because it's definitely something we run into at every client wanting to, let you answer.
So they're all custom views within Allegro themselves. So we have some valuations that run intraday as well, real time, that'll help pick up some of that as they're scheduling or as they're trading. And a lot of our natural gas position ports are all custom, just from how our traders wanted to view their exposure, their position, basis versus whatever, as well as their actual physical position against that as well. But it's all custom.
Yes, and that's what we've seen as well, right? You're not just, you may have a view of a region's pipes, and if you want to know if they're in balance or not, but you may also have the region itself as an entire region in balance. Forward looking, do you know what your position is and things like that? And I think that's something where, natural gas position reports fine for one or two pipelines at a time. Looking at, obviously, can be a big select sometimes in the system. But to your point, that is something we've really seen a lot of and done a lot is making better reporting. In having more real-time information. There were some prior ION tools we worked with that had some of that within the solution, and honestly, it's been a little bit of mimicking that based on Allegro data to get it to work well.
Yeah, and to your point of the regional balancing, right? There's a lot of optionality that we have on some pipes, so it's from a holistic version. The traders want to see it holistically, so that their region is balanced, and then they can make the economic decisions on how they want to balance in those pipes within their region. But we definitely look at multiple pipes at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. How far out are you guys looking on the forward stuff? Are you mainly just focused on current day?
It's usually current month plus one for the detail, and then everything forward, that's a little bit more granular or high level.
Got it. Are anyone else kind of mimicking that strategy as well? I mean, I think that's where a lot of marketing shops want to get, because to your point, you can start to make those economic decisions, right? Am I just going to take the imbalance? Am I going to borrow gas today? What economic decision I'm going to make based on what data is out there. So it's, I love a trade shop that's actually got that view, whether it's in Allegro, whether it's in BI or what have you, actually on the trade floor, right? So they can see the different views, or at least the trader has it up in one of their 18 screens so they can see it. So no, I completely agree. So that's another one where again, we're coming in, we're implementing that core core gas business, but some of the other things that we're adding that we're seeing a lot of folks. So not surprised to see you guys struggling with those same issues, and glad to see folks are finding solutions for those out there in the market.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I know we've got a ton of other slides, and it's not really for us presenting anything as much as just to get the conversation going. Brooke, did you want to open it up at this time just for?
Yeah, so really, we've got most of the room in here as far as clients use the natural gas module in some way, shape, or form. I would say every single one of the partner vendors has implemented a natural gas module at some way, shape, or form, and the customizations. I'd like to know, kicking it off, what, so we had Delali mention at the end of the technology about natural gas scheduling, so the logistics of natural gas and some of the performance issues. What type of things, if you are scheduling in natural gas, what type of performance issues are you seeing? When in the process are you seeing it? Is it when you're trying to disaggregate a path? Is it when you're trying to create the path itself? Or is it when you update? So create, update, or disag something. I'm throwing this out there. Guys, this is a dialogue. And if I need to redefine that or share the definition of dialogue, I will. But yes, Delia, thank you. And we have somebody over there too.
We just actually went live about 10 days ago, but during our testing phase, I could say that on the NG scheduling side, the biggest performance issue is whenever you've already scheduled or streamed your path, if you needed to update a delivered volume. Now, we are producers, so we have thousands of sales meters that we are processing into our NG scheduling for all of our midstreams. So all of these sales meters are being processed. So we have losses for field fuel, for PTR loss and whatnot. So if the scheduler is trying to balance their pull, if they make a change to the delivery side and then tab, the system takes up to 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes at times to just update one single path so that it calculates that receipt volume. And if we change the receipt volume and tab out so that it calculates my delivered, it basically takes just as long. So there's definitely a performance issue within NG scheduling after a path's already been created and you're altering it. I don't know if anybody else.
This is Brianna from Eco Energy. I would love to know what version everyone's on when they talk, because we are in 5868 and we completely stopped pathing completely because we just had so many issues. Our schedulers were literally we're going to quit. And we were like, okay, never mind. We will just do this in Excel and we manually enter a number. So we're about to start an upgrade to Horizon. We have a lot of promises that a lot of the things have been fixed, and now Horizon will help us. So I wonder one you're in.
So Marathon is on 5.3.
Okay.
And that's what we've air quotes upgraded to. And the path in which Delia is referring ties back to our production positions. So there are a lot, there could be thousands of positions that equate to a receipt or delivery quantity in that path. And so it's getting those, it's having to go back and do the allocation back to each one of those positions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's really a technology kind of issue. It is a path in natural gas, logistics issue to make sure that we've got the right horsepower behind it in order to be able to create that. So, it's a twofold issue. And Delia, tell me if I'm misspeaking, but our standard pathing when we update receipt or delivery on a standard receipt delivery, that's pretty instantaneous. We don't have an issue with the updating of that. It's when we are updating something that ties back to specifically into a production position.
Thanks.
We need a mic back there, please.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Trishelle, formerly DCP, now P66. With that said, natural gas scheduling, I'm in version 8. So my question is to piggyback off of what the young lady said earlier. Once we find out that a path has been created and it's missing fuel percentage, when we go back and get that fuel percentage added in Horizon, can you tell me is there a refresh or is it still going forward? Okay.
Yeah, so you do need to delete that.
Okay.
It would be, so, my question to some of the people who do actually, are there actual schedulers in the room? Anybody who actually does? Okay, Trishelle? A couple online, okay. So my question to the schedulers is when you are creating your path, when you click the create path and that puts it in the nominated status, and then there is a submit nom and a schedule, which puts it in, and then you can do a scheduled nom. There are a couple other pieces in that logistics. Are you completing that? Because if and Nazar, I'm going to, and Mark, I'm tagging you on this too. If in that situation, when you need to come back and add fuel or something to that, can you basically delete it to get it back to, you don't have to delete it all the way, but can you get it back to a nominated status, go in, retouch, and save what you've touched on a receipt or delivery to get it to kind of trigger and then submit? Will that work? Has anybody tried that as a solution?
So
You tried it and does it work? Endure does it. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Let me tell you his position on some of this, but.
so Brooke, the problem is you have to have that fuel record when you create the nom, because Allegro is generating that fuel record, in the NG quantity table. So
it doesn't go back and read the services.
Exactly. So it doesn't know that it needs to now generate a fuel record for that path.
And that's what, those are the clarifying answers that I'm digging for.
Yeah, I think that creation happens on update. Sorry.
So I have one more question, and I'm asking this on behalf of my traders. So when they create non-ICE trades, typically they duplicate a previous trade, could be a previous month, a previous day.
Mm-hmm.
When they make their changes on that trade and, verify it afterwards, we find out pretty much every month there's a couple of trades to where the begin in time of the trade, which I believe it defaults to 12 a.m., somehow it gets changed to 1 a.m. And this is a hidden feature for them, so they don't necessarily see it, but we find out that issue because when my schedulers go to schedule it, there's no volume on that trade, so we know that that's the issue. So I guess my question is there a way to hard code that 12 a.m. or to where it can't change?
I've never seen that problem. It's completely new to me.
I mean, we have a fix for it. Of course, once we realize and know that that's what's happening, of course, we have to unlock the trade and then have the trader fix the time on there.
Yeah,
we're good.
There's some duplicate class events that have been out there for a while. Those created actually by ION that you can control not only which fields get reset on duplicate that forces you to update certain fields, but you can embed in that same class event, defaulting it to the 12 a.m. as part of it. It should be a simple change to that class event. And that class event does allow you to say which fields get reset. So out of the box, when you duplicate in Allegro, only certain fields get reset, like trade status and the trade date and other things. So it was built for version 8. It was originally built for version 8, so it's out there. Probably ask the Allegro or knowledge base. Let Dawson Cooper might have it. You might have to twist his arm, but.
I have just one more question, sorry.
No.
So park and loan, when we create noms now in version 8, we have to do it, take it a day at a time. Did I hear that in Horizon that you can actually create a path out there for the whole month and update that path for what days you need?
This is Jack from the.
I'm seeing nods from Nazar, so I'm going to say yes because I believe Nazar.
Oh, do you need the mic?
And if I'm wrong for believing you,
So you
we have
can't,
a
but it's
question
actually
in the
not
corner
great.
too. Thank you. No, go
Yeah,
ahead, Jeff.
just quickly before the other one. So you actually can in Horizon, at least version 5.2. Theoretically, you can do it for the whole month, but if you mess up anything in between, you have to unwind all the way. And especially if something gets invoiced, now you're locked, right? If it's interfaced, even worse. Everything is kind of locked, so you have to unwind everything back, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So you have to kind of do it one day at a time, make sure it's clean first before you go. And a secondary thing to that is the way, at least in version 5.2, when you do parking loan contracts, is you have to, we have to kind of work around it, where we create a transport contract that's the top level and call it a parking loan, because the parking loan fees doesn't seem to be working for the parking loan type, but the transport fees will work. So we just kind of create a fake parking loan top level contract and make those fees work.
Yes, back here.
Ms. Lucas, Energy Transfer. On the scheduling, we're on version 5.3. Yes, you can do rebase load the month, so you can, but it does bring a lot of issues. The system sometimes loses track of the past status. As sometimes you go in the middle of the month, if you had a 0 in the middle between 2 days and you decided to go over it, the time slicing just messes up, loses track of the past status. So we have kind of the ghost path where then schedulers open next day and the whole NAM is not there. And we have to go and kind of create a kind of a view, because at the beginning we were doing this through change requests. To go to the back end and fix it, that we create a kind of a NG quantity maintenance view that, they can go in there and kind of look at what position got turned off, turn it back on so it shows up again in the scheduling view. So it has its issues when you try to base load like that. And we've been struggling with that on 5.3.
Catherine from Amira Energy. I'm just wondering, so we don't path, we call it pathing. We don't create nominations in Allegro really at all. We do all of our variables and things like that outside of the system. I'm just wondering how many people are actually scheduling in Allegro?
Most everybody who is using the.
For those same people, do you also schedule in like a spreadsheet as well?
Oh, absolutely. As a former scheduler, truly, I don't know of any scheduler who will ever get rid of their spreadsheets. Just for all you partners who say that you can promise to get off spreadsheets, don't say that. It's not true. I'm just saying.
Piggyback on the same question, have we noticed random forecast rows dropping out of scheduling randomly at times? And then suddenly when you run a trace through position or settlement, you lose a day of fees or a day of value. And then we have to go in and find the day that it's missing, kind of delete the scheduling row out of it to recreate that forecast row for the NG quality status for it to bring back.
Yes. I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay.
That's version 5.
So Jack, you're on 5.2. You're on
5.3.
3.
Sorry, quickly, one last thing is on that same note, do you also get a random one extra actual quantity? I don't know if it's due to rounding or anything, but every now and then we'll have just one extra quantity in the NG actuals that kind of mess with the value in settlements.
So Oxy.
I hear some yeses over here.
Are you talking after you're on the allocation?
So when you default
or when you're defaulting measures?
Default actuals, you get multiple rows, multiple measures, or are you getting additional?
We see it more in the allocation pane. So after they've defaulted actuals, updated their volumes, and click verify and allocate, then we've seen duplicates records in there before. And similar to the point made before, we also have a front end view of the NG quantity table, the regular physical quantity table, to help fix the pause status issues that we've seen across the board without having to use an ITCR to address those.
What I've seen is NG Measure is tricky. Depending on the fields that you expose to it, it will do the defaulting differently and the roll-ups. And sometimes if you run it one way and then try to run it in an account and expose an extra field that's visible, that's part of the parameters, it kind of messes up the defaulting and the whole. So we had to create kind of a field on the statement where we capture the first time that they defaulted, and always next time they default, always pick the parameters that they had selected initially, because if not, it breaks the whole default measure. And I don't know if that can cause your issue, I'm not sure. For us, it did when we had it like that, and you were doing like different rollovers. It could add a row where you didn't want it. So we had to kind of do like a little class event that will save. And next time you call the function, we pass in all the field parameters on the measure table, so it rolls it up correctly.
All right, keep the cards and letters coming. Come on, what else? We got the people in the room who can help us. We got the people in the room who want to know what's going on. All right, we got topics up here. Okay.
So I'll just ask a quick question. It's derived from Enra Energy. So we're currently exploring for natural gas scheduling, just settling off of plant volume rather than nominated volume, because we get all of these issues with the post status and all the stuff. Is there any reason why we have to norm in Allegro?
No, not to my knowledge. I think it's where you, for settlement, if you set your invoice status to plan, you should be able to run with it.
Okay.
No, because same, I would say no as well. We do the same thing. We have an interface that imports the data for South America from Synthesis, and it doesn't go through all the process. It just brings it in, and we mark everything as plan, and that's done. We settle off of that.
So I don't want to take away from the continuing conversation about past status, but one thing from day one, our little group has always wanted, and I don't know if it's even possible, but instead of having to, if you're going day by day in the scheduling screen, changing the date ranges constantly, is there any way just like we could, if we just have like a toggle, like click day, click day, click day, as opposed to changing that every time? I don't know if that's even possible, or be really nice.
I've done it in the past with a button in a class event to do it, to roll it forward one day. Yeah, there's a way to do it. And
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what everybody would like to do is have that as a feature in core.
Yeah, we did that. We built a custom thing that has a like 1 day plus 1 day minus 1 day. So they just click that and it changes the begin end time for 1 day, and you just select.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah. Okay, cool. We got that as well. Schedulers were saying we don't want to be changing.
Oh yeah, constantly. Yeah.
All right, all good stuff. Come on, keep coming.
Okay,
keep coming.
Jack from Missouri, shifting gears a little bit. Okay. We're on version 5.2. Does anyone else have issues with zone-to-zone pathing and the fees not coming in correctly? We're having to do point-to-point very specifically to make sure all the rates come in, but zone-to-zone or just a blanket one does not seem to work in 5.2.
We did have some issues with the zone-to-zone, but it had to do something with the setup of the fees and the fact that if you had added the pipeline contract or some way we had to kind of, if you create a fee and try to run it rates with different pipeline contracts, the system started getting confused on the zone-to-zone. So we had to create the fee specific for the pipeline contracts and put the rates behind it, then the zone would work. But it's something to do with the way it's treating pipeline between the fee and the rates behind it on your, and that was kind of a workaround, but I think it's still an issue. We have a ticket open that they're looking at. It's still open regarding
ours too.
I got nervous real fast because I thought somebody was still using actual version 5.2 for scheduling, which just dated myself, but sorry, that was my only addition there.
Question from online. It says they're on 5.3 and experiencing issues right now with having to clean up balances on PAL or storage pipeline contracts. Anyone else?
Okay, energy transfer. All right.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, from Energy Transfer. Yes, we've had issues with energy inventory imbalances as you path and then you actualize and you remove imbalance. Sometimes the energy inventory table doesn't update correctly, or when you're moving things into the storage. Even when you're deleting or unwinding the storage, there's an error that is always thrown in 5.3. Our schedulers just ignore it, they hit continue, but it creates issue on the whole tracking because it has to go to several places, right? It has to go to NG inventory when you're unwinding a storage path. Sometimes that doesn't work very well on the unwinding part of it.
Yeah, I think, way back even in, the early 7s coming through, there's sometimes when you unwind, the system kind of caches and you get the ghost volumes and they hang in there. And so there would be a great way to say, if there's a way to identify those ghost volumes to be able to clear them out would be, amazing. And I'm trying to think, and none of my folks are here to help me, but when that occurs, I'm trying to remember, when you've got kind of those stranded volumes, those, there are orphan dress records and settlement and everything else, but when they're in the scheduling and the positions in the inventory, do they have, once they've been deleted, do they still have a position number in there? They should, right? Even if they've been deleted, and so how does the system?
Hey, this is Chris Culbertson from Repsol. I can give a little bit more.
It depends if it's an inventory position or if it's a trade. So if it's an inventory position, it will get deleted. But if it's a trade, you're just unwinding it back to the plan status.
I'd also ask, I've seen customers actually write pretty simple scripts to identify if there ever is an instance of two pause statuses equal to yes and different for the same time frame or an overlapping time frame where they're both active. So that's also a quick check you can set up if you are deleting and seeing any straggling quantities still out there. You can have a relatively simple SQL query that checks that for you.
Hey, can you all hear me? This is Chris Culbertson from Repsol.
Anyone else? Do we want to kick off some of these conversation starters?
Yes,
because y'all have been quiet. Do we need to get coffee?
No.
Can anyone hear me?
All right. What?
Bullet 2.
EDI integration?
EDI integration.
I was just going to ask, is anybody doing
that? I know that was something that was being developed by ION back for 145, 1, 2, 3. Are you using EDI integration? And how is it working for you? And so Oxy.
Tracy from Oxy. Yes, so we are using a third-party EDI integration system to pull from the EBBs and do the pathing directly into Allegro for us. It's been a huge time saver for us, and also added into the granularity of, some things we were doing more monthly based because it was easier and less data intensive, but we've gotten it down to daily levels, which we haven't seen any performance issues with that, but just much cleaner data. We're still in the implementation process. I think we have about 10 pipes live now, but we're slowly rolling on more.
So let me ask you from the EBB, what pathing model are they using? Is it all over the board? Are you using path? Are you pathing unthreaded? Because depending on what the pipeline, you're going to have a different model.
Fair. I'm going to say all over the board. I haven't really been in the weeds of it, but we have several different pipes from several different EBB platforms, and we do a combination of direct EDI where we can, as well as custom scrapers to pull the data for the intrastate versus interstate. We've done this.
So in that EDI, when you're pulling it in Allegro, which are you using just the path? Are you using path non-threaded? Are you using, so are you matching what the actual EBB is? Or are you just putting it into one format? Or are you just entering it into the NG quantity table, skipping logistics and pathing altogether and going straight to actuals?
No, we do the full path. So the unthreaded, that part is beyond me, but it does take right from the EBB's path and match, trade for trade, contract for contract. We'll push out errors if things are not mapped, DUNS numbers, transportation contracts, all of that. But it will do the direct paths and then update for sched quantities the next day. So we path 10,000 MMB2 for today. Tomorrow the EBB comes up and says, psych, it's 9,999. It'll go back and re-update that path with the newest volume. We have a few pipelines that we've actually done through kind of the actualization process just because they're a little bit more complex. And then those are on scrapers, but it's a very similar process.
Tracy, where are you originating the NOM out of the EBB? Or are you using a spreadsheet uploader? What are you doing for that?
It's right from the EBB.
Perfect. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the question is what's the process? And the process is nominating on the EBB, and then from the EBB, they're exporting it into their EDI, and which imports it into Allegro.
And that creates the nomination data set into Allegro, creates the path.
Yes, because when we started looking at it from an efficiency and process standpoint, you're never going to get away from having a NOM on the EBBs, right? So starting from that standpoint and pulling into the system or pushing down a system, whichever way, was the most feasible and more time savings for us.
Are you using a third party to assist with that, or are you going straight to the pipelines
You've got a third party.
We have a third party vendor that's we're using their software, their system. They're helping us with the full process, front to back.
Over in the corner, energy transfer. Sorry.
I was just curious, how do you tie the trades? Because EBB doesn't know about your commercial arrangements, right, or your trades. So how does that work? You bring in the paths, you just pass from the meter to meter, and then let the system kind of pick all the trades under that meter on the supply side or market?
Yes, and we're looking, we have a custom process within the third-party system because we haven't fully explored, which is one of the topics further down, rankings within Allegro itself. That's our next step, to actually do it in the system instead of the third-party software. So we do have multiple trades with the same counterparty all at the same point, right? Again, to your point, the EBB is not going to know how to allocate it or cut it. So we're using their third-party software right now to apply those rankings based on, base load versus gas daily price, whatever it is, industry standard cuts. And then our next step is to back that up into Allegro itself and apply those rankings properly on the trades. And then the third-party software will read those rankings and allocate properly.
Catherine from Amira. Does anybody so those that don't schedule out of Allegro, does anyone here schedule out of a modular scheduling model? Does anybody have a scheduling app? Custom or purchased? That's not Allegro, so something that you're integrating?
I think everybody's using the natural gas logistics model, which is the scheduling. Anybody try the path non-threaded in Allegro? So Tracy, one of the things that I would really like I want to circle up with you when this is all over, is when you do your EBB, how that, what the pathing models is, which pipeline has which pathing model, to see how it's pulling into Allegro. I'm very interested in that. Gathering. Yeah. Anything else? We got time, folks.
Somebody is asking, they want the tips on how we're clearing out balances.
Okay, so for like inventory balances and storage balances, that kind of thing? So, all right, so those of you who do go out and clear out your balances, what's the process you take? How do you do that? Where do you go?
Can you hear me?
And I don't think it's a change request to IT to go zero something out.
Guess they won't unmute
So are
me.
you putting in like a mock imbalance trade to take something to zero? Are you pathing something to a random point that can then be not valued?
We're talking about pipeline imbalances, balance is just the commodity positions on your pools, or, I mean,
Yeah,
just imbalance on the pipeline? Because we do a process, through the actualization, if it's imbalanced with your TSAs or the pipelines to go and create your cash out, you set up all that. We do have a process of partial cash outs, which is not out of the box in Horizon, but we can implement it through a trade and kind of reschedule that trade kind of to move, because sometimes, we can hit the imbalance this month, but we don't have to pay like until 4 months later. So we call it a partial cash out. And we do that through trades, and they schedule those.
Tiffany, was there any detail on that as far as?
No, but we do have somebody that commented from it. I know our online folks this seems to be a hot topic.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't unmute them because we're getting too much feedback into the room. We'll try to do better at the next AUG conference for that. But anyways, I stated we've had issues with our non-expired pipeline storage contracts, be it Nat Gas, PAL, or Nat Gas storage, gets out of whack from what the pipeline operator has. So for example, we have one non-expired contract, says K123, and that K123 shows an NG inventory balance of 100. However, the pipeline operator has 120. We'll extend an expired contract, ideally in a month that's not likely to be reactualized, as that can also cause issues. We'll run a script to update the NG inventory record for the expired contract to have 20, then we'll withdraw that 20 from the expired contract, inject it into the non-expired contract, so we true up to the 120.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a standard.
Clear as mud.
I actually was able to follow that, and that's, back in my scheduling days, that's pretty much how we would have to do it. We would have to change the date range on the contract, schedule it out, transfer it to the non-expired, then re-terminate, end date the original contract, and then you would have your balances. So I think that's pretty much about the only way that they can do it.
I do have one thing I'm curious for also, just if you were to do EDI integration, from just what would be the ideal use case? Would it be easier for you to start off and actually push schedules and nominations out from Allegro if you had the ability to do that and track everything with the actual trades you're dealing with? Or are there business reasons that you would want to always still use the pipeline EBBs or other portals and then have it recreate the noms in Allegro? What's the ideal integration that you guys would like to see? I'm curious.
So, yeah, okay, so did y'all get that for EDI? What would be the ideal direction?
In recent conversations with several customers, they would much rather go from the EBB to Allegro because the scheduling process in Allegro is not the way they think of it, and it's not ideal for the way they want to do it, and they know how to schedule on EBBs. It's easier to schedule on EBBs, and that's the official record. So to have that automatically come back into Allegro is much easier for them. Plus, you've heard a few of the issues they've been dealing with when having to schedule, and a lot of people schedule through virtual points, and they have, issues with volumes disappearing and that kind of thing. So they would much rather it come directly from the EBB. They have to schedule on the EBB anyway. They'd rather do it that way. Now, you could originate from Allegro and have it go out, but every customer I've talked to would much rather have it automatically come from the EBB back into Allegro and create the volumes. You're never going to get 100% on that, but if you can get to 80% of your scheduling done, that would be great.
And to your point, Russ, how many schedulers or people or companies in here, when they do they've got their spreadsheets, do they upload a spreadsheet into the EBB? I know that it's not an EDI into the pipeline, but it's actually, there are an awful lot of pipelines that have like a CSV upload capability that they can, it's a pretty simple process to run a macro, put your spreadsheet stuff in there and upload it. Anybody utilize that?
There's been interest from a client to do that as opposed to EBB, but I think it's a bit of a split house. You've got one group that doesn't want to lose the integrity and knowledge and training on the individual pipeline EBBs. So, like you pointed, if something you have to cut on the weekend, you got to react very quickly, right? It's nice to know exactly what you're doing on that EBB. However, it is nice to have everything consolidated into a spreadsheet and be able to upload it that way. So more of what Russ said, I agree, is what I've seen.
Maybe one other quick question, just as far as parking loans, and curious how many of you, as far as customer base, are you doing longer term parking loans where you have a predefined injection withdrawal period where you'd really want to value that more like a time spread across prices versus more of a balancing instrument that you're just using day to day? How common are the predefined pricing ones, and is that something that you prioritize wanting to see in the system?
Go ahead and speak into the microphone, please, Larry.
Yeah. Well, I was corrected both just now, but I think I would say out of the last 4 times we've modeled parking loans even more to capture the time spread, more of that arbitrage opportunity.
All right, for those of you in the room who have actualized in natural gas, this is a pain point for an awful lot of people. The view in itself is very, very difficult. When as you've got all your pathing coming in, when you default actuals, there are, you've got to customize it in order to bring in a path record. Whereas, there's differences between your petroleum products actuals and your natural gas actuals. So for those of you who are, don't know, in the petroleum product actuals, you can pull it in by a shipment. You can pull it in by a carrier, pipeline. So in natural gas, having that capability to go down to the path level in NG actuals, from what I have heard, would be a great addition to core code. Also, as you have multiple paths, if you have, especially in the path model, which I think a lot of people typically use, if you have going from one supply to multiple deliveries on the same contract, being able to make sure, or multiple deliveries going to multiple markets. So, so you've got one location to one location, but you've got 4 different markets. You're trying to make sure that you have all of the markets accounted for in your actuals. But in natural gas actuals, you are only getting the one for one. You're getting the aggregate total. You're not getting the disaggregated quantities. Does anybody else ever, for those people who use natural gas actuals, anybody have those issues, and how do you get around not knowing, making sure that you've got all the right allocations to your downstream markets or your upstream markets?
Jonathan from Permian again. We do both. We do petroleum products actualization and also natural gas. And I've never really considered that. Yes, you're right. You're looking at more shipment level on the petroleum stuff, but that would be a nice feature, I'm sure, on the natural gas side. I actually ran into the exact issue you're describing on an NG side like 2 days ago as they were actualizing, and I sat down to try and help them figure it out because I don't really do the actualizations. Once we verified that, yes, all the markets were there, in the scheduling screen, and we had it all pathed correctly. I mean, we then just, went to that single line, the aggregate line, like you're saying, in the actualization screen and just made it the right volume, but it was short 30,000 for one day, and we literally could not figure out why.
This is Jack from Missouri. To add on to that, we actually use actualization, but it is, like you said, very hard to use. So my team actually built custom reports directly out of the database so they can see their days, their locations, what the volumes are, and they utilize the reports to see what their actual numbers are. With that, I wanted to ask, kind of earlier we were talking about, is there any downside to not using actualization at all? Because I hear some people just take it to plan, and if you get cut, you just update the number on plan. So I don't know if Ion Group or anyone else can answer to this. What is the downside to just like not using this at all and just doing everything on the plan status?
The pipeline support, the way you get it, and sometimes the accountants have to tie to the statements. So you're trying to mimic in the actualization screen what the pipeline is sending you, if you're dealing with that, and try to tie. And they use that view to kind of make sure. So it's one point of on the recon. When you go to the plan, you don't get that type of rolled up level, because that's what the pipeline sees and sends you. They don't see your trays, they don't see your plan, they don't see all that detailed position behind it, right? You just get a measure of volume from here to here, location, so they try to kind of mimic it.
Is that more of an internal recall, or is that more?
It's kind of internal recon, and so a way for them to tie and make sure that what they put in the system, the ETRM, matches the pipeline support that we get.
Just one more thing regarding what he's saying, I agree, like you want to, and that's where we were at the other day, was trying to, match up these points to make sure they had the right volumes, et cetera. I mean, the way I've made the actualization screen, and this is, I don't know, every different pipeline, the statement comes, differently as well. And so then I just reorganize that center pane. I drill it different ways, either by contract, then by location, then by counterparty, or whatever. Or then I'll do, if the statement makes more sense to do it this way, I'll do receipts and deliveries, then location, then counterparty. I just reorganize it every time I go in to actualize whichever pipe I'm on that best fits the way the data comes. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really the recommendation, is to duplicate the actual view per pipeline to match your statement, because you want to mimic it. Instead of reorganizing it every time, to just rename the actual per pipeline, and then it's already organized to match the statement. Going back to your question about including the default to generate it on a path level, because every statement is different. You may have statements with a path or without a path. It's really dynamic. If you make the NG path column visible in the NG measure, then the system knows it needs to default with a path number. If you make it invisible, then it just aggregates on a point level, contract level. So you can modify it per pipeline. So if the pipeline that you receive in the statement for includes the NG path on a path level, then that particular view include the column in the measurement pane. Then it defaults to match your statement.
Hang on 1 second, please.
Unless from energy transfer. Let's make a clarification. It's not really the path key that you can tie to the Horizon system in your path nominations, but it's a package field. Every time you create a path, it creates this another number called a package, and that's the one that gets exposed in the measure pane.
Well, we default the package from the path, but you can modify it.
Yeah.
We should be able to see both as well.
Yeah. So, but that has its, like you mentioned, it has its challenges. And once you go one way on the allocation, make sure you stick to that view, because the moment you default again and you miss, like I mentioned, it breaks your whole allocation. It won't allocate anymore. Like somebody redefaults and you add a column that was not there on your first default, it breaks that allocation.
That's why you generate multiple views. So you duplicate the view, name it per pipeline, and only use that particular view for that particular pipeline.
So I'm going to ask about just the viability of having multiple views? How many pipelines does the average company schedule or actualize? 3, 5, 15, 25?
We probably have like 25. So that would be a lot.
25 different views.
So thinking about the multiple view standpoint, we have a customized solution, which we'll touch on tomorrow, that within the view itself, you can create different looks and you can make them public. So you can save one, a view for TechCo, so it's drilled a specific way, or have the specific columns, one for NGPL, whatever, how their pipe support comes, and they can be shared publicly so that all the accountants, if somebody's out sick and somebody else has to now actualize TechCo, they can pull up that same view with those same exact parameters, same drill set, and be able to look at it apples to apples. That's been a huge advantage to us across the system, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But it's really helped instead of having to create multiple actual views in your navigation. No, and again, I'm not the technical side, but it saves it that way. Does it, the question was if we use templates, and no, it's not. It's literally just being able to cache and save the drill structure, the parameters, everything within that view itself. User config. Thank you.
Cool. I like that.
Is it me? I know we've got a couple threads going around everything with actualization, but to Jack's question, I think it's important to note that if validating your imbalance, either in kind or in cash, is something you want to do off the pipeline statement, not just accept it from what the pipeline is saying for imbalance, this is the only place that you can calculate that yourself. So if you are invoicing off of planned status, right, not actualizing yourself, you've made the choice to take, right, whatever imbalance, either in kind or charges, that you're getting from the pipeline. So certainly viable, right, but if it's something that you wanted to calculate on your own, you would not have that opportunity.
He says thank you.
That was a good point. Thank you. Okay, so we can sit here and stare at each other for the next hour.
No. Hey, I will.
Tiffany will sing for us.
No, I won't. Still not doing it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Brooke, for filling in for Nat Gas.
I am filling in for Nat Gas. We need somebody to be a liaison. You really don't want to listen to me at the next AUG.
I called you a fill-in for a reason.
I know.
We have a liaison. Jonathan Kreitz is going to step in for Nat Gas.
Come on up, Jonathan. Jonathan, come close us out.
Hey,
come close us out. Yes.
I mean, you did do it at conference, which means you have to step foot on the stage.
I don't actually know what's next, and I'm about to leave, so.
Okay.
I need to tell them.
I just want to tell everybody too, now we have our liaisons. However, we absolutely welcome co-liaisons. No one wants to do this alone. So if there's a particular session or area that you feel you can really contribute to, please speak up, because we would love to have co-liaisons even. Our liaisons would love to have secondary people to ping things off of and doing working groups and things like that, so.
I was going to say, I think I can speak loudly enough, but.
Not for the online people.
Not online people, thank you. Working groups, what Tiffany just mentioned. We have the liaisons, but we need working groups. This is where we're really going to get some good ideas to get through, to come up, to present to ION, to make this product better.
So when we talk about our working groups, basically, if you're having, let's say Jonathan now decides to have an online Nat Gas session where you're just going to talk Nat Gas for an hour, 2 hours. I mean, maybe he'll go 5. I don't know. But what comes out of that is your group and says, you know what, this is something we'd really like to push through ION. We're going to then design a working group so that you can get your experts into that working group. You'll have a lead on it. That doesn't have to be AUG members, only the lead does. So if you guys have experts within your company that maybe aren't involved with the group themselves, but they would be really experts at that particular topic within the nat gas, we want them on the working group. We want them to help out. Those items then will come up through the liaison and up to council to figure out how it hits the roadmap for ION. So that's kind of how our working groups are going to work. So they'll be short-term working groups depending on the project. So, anything else? All right. Vendors do not have to leave the room. Yay! ION does not care. We don't either. So, no further ado, let's bring up ION.